Welcome once again to Marilyn Hawes. And we threatened that we go to Bermuda, and we're there again, isn't it, Posh? And there she is in the kitchen. She's just got up. So don't expect her to be on form today because it was a late night last night. And she does like the red wine, especially in Bermuda.
I've actually gone on to whites now, you'll be pleased to know. I haven't had any, but I've had what I have had over here. They make this wonderful Bloody Mary cocktail, and you can buy the packets of it all with the cayenne and the different Tabasco sauce and goodness knows what else already prepared. And all you got to do is sling in the vodka. Oh, it's just, it nearly rips off the back of your throat, but it's absolutely stunning. So I'm going to bring some of these pre-prepared packs back, I think, because I don't like tomato juice, but I have now discovered I absolutely am into Bloody Mary cocktails.
Well, it's the only healthy part of the cocktail. I mean, well, listen,
there's zero calories in it. It's about 20 calories in this drink.
Oh my goodness me!
It is fantastic. It's absolutely lovely. But I'm very sidetracked today because out of the corner of my eye is this ever-changing scene on the water. And all the little white horses are just very, very, very rough out there today.
We have some pics, and we're going to show you what she wakes up to in the morning.
Oh,
this is why she's late this morning. And have a look at these. Would you pay for this view? Of course you would, because it's location, location, location.
And this, to me, this view is the essence of Bermuda. This is what it's about. The palm trees, the turquoise sea, the white houses, the sun is now shining, and the colours. You come out at the airport and all the beautiful colours of Bermuda. I mean, even the men, when they go to work, they wear these tabs shorts, and they're coral, they're pink, they're turquoise, they're yellow.
This is a family show. Just be careful.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
we've already had Bloody Mary. Now we're into short.
But I mean, the colours, it's so pretty. The pastel colours, that's everywhere you go. It is stunning.
Well, I tell you what,
my happy place.
Well, yes, but can I compare that to a wonderful part of the world where we used to live, and in fact still do at times, and that's North Wales. And it's gorgeous. But the weather is, and the buildings are grey. The roof, well, it's slate roof because that's where you get slate from. But with a bit of imagination, we put some red tiles on it, would cheer the whole place up and paint.
Well, I remember a family holiday when the children were tiny. We went to North Wales, and I sent this postcard with the same script on it to absolutely everybody. I've never lived in so much grey slate, grey houses, grey clouds, grey people. I said, I'm sure they brought all the leftover paint from World War II and painted everything grey. I was absolutely miserable. It is the polar opposite of here.
Well, yes, but I have heard they do the best fish and chips in the world there. Well, we'll move on. Listen, things have, in your absence, carried on apace. And we've been hearing from some universities where things start, things are hatched. One of the things that are being hatched is a survey on the academics, the high up academics, the professors and university lecturers. And 2/3 of them actually believe that sex is binary. Well, that two genders, in other words. Now, you'd have thought 99.99% would be no, 2/3, but it's better than I feared. And the other thing is that they believe, apparently, a third are non-binary. Well, yeah, that coincides with 2/3 believing in the other side, but a third of the university professor believe in non-binary. Okay, it gets worse. 2/3, back to the same original, believe in gender fluidity. Now, these gentlemen and ladies that are winning all the accolades and have risen to a high status in universities, that are teaching your kids to believe, you can guarantee this, that gender fluidity is the rage, and it's okay. Tuesday you can be a boy, Thursday you can be a girl, etc. Now, if the leading lights of our nation are believing this and eschewing this to our students, Marilyn, is there any hope?
Well, it is a worry, isn't it? Because you wonder why there's so many children with mental health issues. I mean, I was saying to one of my daughter's friends over here the other day that, I went into this school, which it's only a year ago, and they asked me if I wanted to go to the diversity room for my lunch. And I thought, oh, that sounds unusual. I go in there with my cheese sandwich. I thought, I wonder what that's about. I was expecting it to be something sort of like culturally geographical or something like that. But there was all these kids lolling around over each other, massaging each other's hair, long hair, lanky hair, you name it. And this one boy came up and they were all wearing their pronoun badges, he, him, she, her, and some had they, them. And this was my sort of first intro into this sort of transgender sort of thing. And I said, what does they, them mean? The teacher said, oh, that's the ones that don't really know what they are. Oh, so this lad came up to me with shoulder length hair and he said, oh, hello, miss, my name is now Luca. I was Lucy. And I said, oh, I hope you're very happy with that. I said, I'm not very good with names, so I'll probably call you Mickey Mouse or something next time I see you. But it was the first time I'd really had an insight into it. But even with the little ones now, 5-year-olds, you've got these gender toilets that 5-year-olds can go in, and it's just not. I just don't think. There's enough confusion in kids' lives now with social media and goodness knows what else. That when you're 5 years old, surely you just need to learn to play and do your sums and spell and go for a wee. I mean, all this and you. Oh, today if you're John and now you want to be Jenny, we won't tell mummy. But we're just teaching kids to lie.
Oh, utterly outrageous. That is
outrageous.
I mean, this is, you
but if the university
would not go this way, this is when the state come up and say, we know better than you. You're just parents.
This is why I like Miriam State, because she's so grounded about it. I find it. I think it's very worrying and I think parents today that are choosing their schools for September need to be asking what it is what is the attitude, what is the narrative in the school for this, that, and the other. What is the reading material like? What are you going to be giving my child? And if you're not happy with it, then they should challenge the school and challenge the council, challenge the LEA.
Well, are they interested in it? Do they bother? Do they get up off their chairs and spend some time with their children, or are they busy dashing and doing other things?
Well, I think my lot have all 4 of my children. Their children are in lovely schools and nurseries and all of that, and they all spend, when they are there, even though both parents are working, a phenomenal amount of time, quality time with their children. And that is so important. But some, of course, don't. Some just carry on working and the children are left to the devices of the nanny. And that is, if you like, is what we would call affluent neglect.
Yes, let me give you another.
And that is on the increase, that, people are shipping out their kids to what have you and not making that input. But, my daughter always picks her children up from school. My other children all pick their children up from school, which is so important, because the moment that child comes out of school, first thing you say, how was your day? And out it all comes. Oh, so-and-so was horrible, this, that, and the other. And blah, 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 blah. If somebody else picks them up, they might not say. And when mum or dad come home, they're not going to say by them, because the moment of release has passed. And it's so important that parents do that they, can be, if possible, there to pick their children up from school. That is a really important time.
Let me give you another insight into what is happening in our schools in the United Kingdom. Groups are allowed in at the say-so mainly of the head teacher. Now, there's one new group, fairly new group, called Tender. Sex ed, of course, most of them are. And they sort of do a lot of role play. Boy chats up girl. Depends how far that goes and what comes out of it and what they learn. It can be abused. But other organisations are in there, like LGBT, which come out with some strange statistics, like at least 10%, sometimes 30% of you really are homosexuals. Well, I'm sorry, that is a lie. At the last census, it was it was less than 2% that identified. The other thing that happens in the schools, of course, is the awful drag queen situation.
I don't know why they let them in. It's absurd.
Absolutely. I mean, it's pornography.
But they're
acted out by fellas.
They're letting them into primary schools.
Yes,
I mean,
they do.
What do they think? What do the kids think? Do they think it's a pantomime act?
Well, I know, and they do it in libriaries in America, not just schools.
Oh, do they?
Oh, well, they can get the kids that way. Have therefore, Marilyn, the headmasters, headmistresses, have they got too much autonomy? Should this not be going through a filter who they let in?
Well, they should be the filter, shouldn't they? They should actually be looking at what these people are going to be doing when they come into school. They shouldn't just let people in carte blanche. I mean, with the stuff that I do in schools, which is nothing like this, I mean, I always say that here's the handouts, here's the information, here are the resources, here's the slides I'm going to be presenting. If you don't like it, if it's not your requirement, then I can always adjust it. But as a head teacher, I would not let, especially anything to do with sex education or life, I would not be letting anyone in without I had completely checked it out first and seen for myself and the governors, especially if it's going to be contentious.
Yes, indeed. Right, look, we got to move on. We've got so many things to cover. COVID-19, let's go back to the dear old COVID, which is still rampant, but now it's been watered down, of course, and therefore it's just a cold in some cases. Long COVID is rearing its ugly head week by week. We got some stats being issued. Well, I say stats. Between 13 and 16 million people died in the 2.5, 3 years of COVID. Now, why they can't get it more accurate than that, it doesn't sort of do modelling any good, but it's a lot of people. Why it's such a wide range, I don't know. But some people are becoming whistleblowers. Bless the whistleblower. And it is becoming evident, A, that Wuhan was responsible.
Well, of course it was.
B, they could have stopped it there and then. If an outbreak like this had to happen anywhere, it's great that it happened in China. What? Well, it's a completely controlled society.
Yeah.
And they had the chance of putting a lid on the thing, but they didn't. That very week, when it was just starting, they held a banquet for various things. I think it was something to do with industrialization of Wuhan. But you know how many people were there? 100,000 people attended. Can you think of anything worse to spread COVID than 100,000 people?
But I can't. It's just right from the start. People thought it was there. It came out of that lab. The thing I would love to know, was it deliberately released, or was it an accident? Was it a deliberate thing to attack Western capitalization, Western society, and bring it down and destroy it? Well, they've made a jolly good job at making a massive, great hole in it, haven't they? And I still, that's the bit I'd like. I don't think there's ever been any doubt it started from Wuhan, but was it deliberate, or was it just something that mistakenly happened?
It's a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, it is a conspiracy theory.
I mean, the other theory, of course, is that it was a lab with all the fittings from America. They didn't want their dirty work in their own doorstep, and actually America was funding this. Will that ever come out?
Probably in about another 100 years. But, you know, when they have the next, pandemic, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes in the world, isn't there? There's so much corruption and backslapping and underhand deals that we never, ever hear about, that are covered up by probably a select few dozen or something like that, that are the real leaders of the world. Do you know what I mean? And
yes.
we are kept in complete silence. We don't know what's going on. We might suspect it. And I think that's why the conspiracy theories leap up, because we're not stupid. So we start using our imagination and start inventing ideas and what have you. But I think there is a truth in some of these conspiracy theories. It's something, you know, because we all sort of kind of know that the truth is never there.
Well, corruption can be applied to the land that both of us know very well in Europe and Portugal. They just had an election on Sunday, and that was because of corruption. And for 8 years, it's been going on. And the two major parties, one party is a bit left of centre, the other is a bit right of centre. But the whole of Portugal is perhaps a bit left of centre. And the right of centre Reform, their version of Reform party, if you wish, that we have in UK, has come along and said, "You're corrupt, you lot," and they're going to get a massive amount of votes. They could be in a position of choosing the king. Now, that could happen in the UK, especially now, some people say, Lee Anderson has cast his hat into the ring and he's gone over to Reform. And there's a lot. So in other words, they've got somebody in Parliament already.
Do you know what's so lovely about being over here is there's a real release of the tensions that are in the UK. I haven't seen the BBC or any news for 4 days, and there is and it is like living in a bubble here, but you're like released and free from all that tension, and you don't realize how much it does actually eat away at you, the concern and everything. Now, when we were in Portugal, there was still a lot of, because it had been at one time a dictatorship, wasn't there? And there was still the little old ladies up in the hillsides with their like black scarves around their head, and they'd see you driving up in your car and they'd scurry into their houses. And there was still a lot of the dictators' families that were still in power. And there was a guy, I think he was called Socrates or something, and he was voted in. And I can remember when we were over there saying, he's not going to last long, because he wanted to bring in a graded tax system, so that, you know, you had, like, why should everybody be paying the same tax? So if you're a barrister, why should you be paying the same tax as if you're a lawyer? And I can remember saying to my husband, we won't last long, because there's so many like right-wing former dictators' families that are still in power, almost by nepotism, you know, that are not going to have that. And yeah, very soon he was voted out. And it is corrupt over there. It is very corrupt over there. There's a lot of influence in the cork industry, the wine industry, a lot of corruption. There is. When we were there, and they were always proud of it. There was a lot. And in a way, that's what drove me out of there to come back to England again, but which wasn't a lot better. But I mean, to go to a maternity unit over there, when I was over in Portugal, the barrister would pay €1,000, and so would the lawyer's wife. And there was no middle ground at all. It wasn't. I found the dynamics of politics over there very difficult.
Well, Southern Europe has a reputation, let's put it that way. Never get bored here with politics. We move on, but maintaining a Latin influence. Apparently, the Pope is in trouble because in his heart of hearts, he presumes he's gone Anglican. Although he daren't say same-sex marriages are okay, he said it. He's not going to make it official, but he's going to turn a sort of blind eye, and it won't be part of the church. But yes, you can welcome them in. Thin end of wedge springs to mind, and for that reason, the South American priests are up in arms because they're a lot more conservative. Maybe they've seen the disaster of the liberal laws that have been brought in by the Anglican Church, And quite rightly, they fear that for the Roman Catholic Church. Where is it going to end? And it's got so far that a group of them have got together and are now wishing the Pope was in heaven right away. In other words, a death threat. Well, not exactly a threat. Oh, no, we didn't say that. Unfortunately, a certain whistleblower wasn't listening to them, and he blew the whistle with a video. And yes, they did say that. So the Pope is on notice to go to heaven.
God, well, they have got the mafia over there, so maybe he needs to be careful. I mean, I don't like this Pope at all. Sorry, I don't like him. So good riddance. I just don't. You know, my thing on child abuse. I just think he's been very weak, and if he's going to suddenly like say about homosexual marriages, I would rather he said to his Catholic priests, you can now be married and you can now have children and you can now have sex, because I think that's half the blooming problem. It doesn't say anywhere in that I have read in the Bible that a priest can't marry. I don't know where that's come from. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why why there has been so much problem with child abuse in the Catholic Church.
The Apostle Paul actually said it's better in authority sense, in other words, a minister, that you stay single, then you've not got any divided loyalties between your wife and the church.
Oh, that is.
He didn't. It wasn't a law. He suggested that women were too much of a distraction. Now, most males will agree with that. We've got to be honest, Marilyn.
Well, you know, that's what we're here for, to stir up men, isn't it? I mean, I have had Catholic priests say that to me, that you have got more time to hear your congregation and the woes of it all. And I mean, I have to say, when I've been to monasteries, I have found the monks to be very much a grounded, understanding force of humanity, more than you would ever imagine. But nonetheless, that's not so much what it's about. You know, I had my dog castrated, and I mean, I just don't think I think it's an enormous ask to insist on chastity. I really do.
Now, you saying that the priest should be castrated?
No. I'm just saying they should be allowed. If you keep your dog, your male dog, intact, it's going to hump anything with a pulse, isn't it? I mean, you have to make it. I think the trouble is with the priests, I think they see children as being pure, and they don't have that same somehow emotional connection. It's like I did have someone say that to me once that was in prison, that he didn't see children because he wasn't having sex with an adult. He was doing this with an angelic child. Now, that is a sick thought process.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But if that's what they believe, and that's how they get around having sex, that is an extremely distorted thought process. And I think the Pope would be far better. And whoever the next Pope is, he's got to sort out this thing with priests having sex with children.
After Women's World Day, or what do they call it?
International Women's Day. It was.
That's him. And you've got it all. You've got it all. You've got to say. And again, back to stats, is that for donkey's years now, quite rightly, I must say, people have been wearing pink ribbons and various things about breast cancer as being a scourge. It is. So is prostate cancer amongst men, but you don't hear from it until very recently. Why? Come on, there's a question for you.
Well, why do we wear pink ribbons?
No, why do we? Why suddenly, at last? Well, again, figures in the United Kingdom, not strictly worldwide, but the amount of deaths is about 10,000-11,000 for breast cancer for ladies, obviously. Although there are some men in that, strangely, not many.
Yeah.
But prostate's about the same. Well, we don't hear from this until the last couple of years.
No, I think it's right that my boys actually did a golf day. They did 4 rounds of golf in a day, raising money for prostate cancer, and they raised 4 grand. And that's why I think it's so great that King Charles came out and said about it, because I don't think men want to talk about it. I think it's all kept under wraps, which is absolutely ridiculous, because it is a massive killer, prostate cancer, a massive killer. And men should go and be checked. And that is great that now there is this movement. Go and get checked, boys. Go and get checked, boys. In the same it was with women about breasts and also having cervical smears, because the amount of women, but I do think it's a male thing, maybe, that the men don't want to talk about it. So, and a lot of men don't come forward and therefore end up dying of it instead of getting it sorted. So I think it's a great thing that's now being spoken about. I really do. Very, very important. And it's fixable.
Indeed, in the early stages, it is very fixable.
Yeah.
Right, GB News are coming under the cosh.
Again.
Not surprised, again. Because there's more truth coming out of GB News than the rest of the blooming media on the news side together. But I think this tells a lot about society and about mobile phones, because it's either a blessing or a curse, a mobile phone. We've covered this on many occasions. But one of the blessings is that you can walk down a street, not carry a big heavy camera with you, just carry your mobile phone. And some of the recent ones are practically as professional. They're not, because they won't cope with bad lighting, which you've got to do in professional camera work. But if the sun is shining, my goodness me, it's very difficult to tell the difference on footage. And lots of people are sending in videos to GB News about things that you would not hear about normally, about what really goes on in a street in a northern city, how people are being abused, and it is sectarianism. And all this diversity is not working.
No.
Well, I mean, it is in one sense, Marilyn, it's working to make people upset.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and this is the benefit of these things. You actually get it in real time, don't you? And you send it off in real time, unfettered, not edited, and it goes out as it is. And you can't, the thing is, the camera never lies. Well, that is very true when you're doing something on like this and you're sending it purely as is. I mean, how many other reports that come in are nipped and tweaked and tucked, so you don't still get the real footage? You know what I mean?
I should ask the Princess of Wales. She's an expert.
Yes, I've just seen that, because I haven't seen any news the last 3 or 4 days. I mean, what was that all about?
Well, I mean, she's an amateur photographer and did a bit of tweaking, which is not really allowed. Depends how much you tweak for mainstream media. But again, it's been over-egged. Well, and she said, well, yes, I shortened the length of the arm or whatever. Really?
Haven't they got better things to talk about and better things to report on and more important things? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's utter nonsense about her recovering from this abdominal surgery. The likelihood is she's had a hysterectomy, as have many of us, and we were up and running and at it within 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, unless it was something far more complicated, but every single day there's something about it. Drives me mad.
Well, I've got another thing for you then, because I've discovered eventually what's it all about. All these newspapers, and it's Rupert Murdoch, of course, who's opened my eyes, because he's on his 5th marriage.
I know.
At age 92. Listen, it gets worse. He's had 6. Well, I was going to say girlfriend. No, they were actually proposed to them, and before they got to the altar, he's no, don't fancy that after all. But okay, we 2 engagements and 6 marriages. But what is the matter with the man? I mean, he's paying out millions. Now, has he not heard of the words prenup? But obviously not. I mean, one thinks back to dear old Jerry Hall. That's Mick Jagger's ex. And everybody thought, oh, this will last. They both come from showbiz, inverted commas. But it didn't, because one day he sat down and thought, oh, no, I can't cope with this. And rather than face the lady and say, not really working out, is it, Jerry? No, he writes an email. The email simply said, we've had lots of good times, dear, but there's lots more other things I'd like to do. Honestly, I've heard of Dear John letters, but not one. But I reckon, he paid out 1.1 billion, and he keeps doing that as a settlement. Why doesn't he?
I know it is, but it's ridiculous. I mean, I can't, it's a bit like saying, oh yes, how much was I in love with your wallet? I couldn't believe it when I saw that. 92 years old, 6 man. Why? It's cheaper to buy a carer to come and look after you.
Well, this latest lady apparently is 67 years of age. He's not gone for a 25-year-old Swedish lady.
I know,
he's to be congratulated that, he's looking at the older ladies slightly.
Maybe he's got dementia.
Oh dear, yeah, which leaves us back to America. No, it doesn't. We're moving on from America. I tell you what, I've got an interesting story here that is probably right up your street, and it concerns a headmistress. Now, I'm going to get this wrong, but I shall try and pronounce her name. Shelley Ann Malabua Goulburn. I don't think it is Goulburn, but that's near enough. Fancy having all those names. How'd you get to be a headmistress with all of? Well, she did. And apparently she's been sacked. And she was sacked because after school, about 8 o'clock in the evening, she was there and she brought a couple of children in there so that she could spend some time with them because she was that busy at school. And the 3-year-old son, and he'd done this before, he got hold of a bottle of sanitizer. And he was told by his mum, don't do that again, it's dangerous. And don't eat it. But the following week, which is this.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
Yeah, we're talking, the event that we're talking about now. She said, you're doing it again. Tapped him with 2 fingers on his hand. But there was a lady, a trained lady, and again, I'm going to mention her name, Ms. Bhagawandas. Apparently, she was appointed as a child safety officer within the school. Now, what was she doing there at 8 o'clock at night?
That's very true.
Well, I smell a rat here because she said this child was abused and the school governors believed her. The police were called in and there she was out on her starboard lug-hole. Actually, the story has a happy ending because she went to court and the judge said, oh, what a ridiculous thing this is.
I mean, well, unless there was a catalogue of stuff that had never been reported and this was the thin end of the wedge, but just to tap a little, was it better that he actually drank the hand sanitizer and then ended up in hospital? Absolutely. When I did see that when it was last week before I came over here, I could not believe what I was reading. I had to read it 3 times. You just tap a child's hand with 2 fingers, just tap, tap, don't touch. And that's abuse. Absolutely ridiculous.
What they would have done in our day, Marilyn, when board dusters and chalk was flying around and the end of rulers, goodness only knows. But who's right? Who's had the better, well-behaved generation?
Well, I don't know. I do feel awful that I smack my children, actually. I mean, in our day, you were a bad parent if you didn't. But what you see, I mean, I just find the very good parents today, young parents today, are very good at sitting the children down, talking to them. So I saw my daughter-in-law's brother-in-law, right? They got 4 boys, and one day I saw this boy slap his brother in the face, and instead of going like we would have done in our day, smacked him back and said, don't smack your brother as we smacked them. Do you know what I mean? It was like, sit down, we're going to have a chat. How did that make you feel when your brother did that? Well, I didn't like it. Did you hear that? He didn't like it. So why did you do it? Oh, well. Okay, fine. Well, couldn't you have just asked him to give it back to you? And now what are you going to do about, now I know that takes a lot of time, but that is the way to teach children emotional intelligence, that, you know, my behavior hurt my brother. My brother's just told me that. And that's what I see today, and today's the nice, good parents today do actually sort it differently. And I've actually said to all my kids, I am so sorry I smacked you, because the way it is today, like my older boy, he just, like, the moment there's something, he just takes the child out of the room and they go and sit somewhere else and they have a chat about it. And then the child comes back in and apologizes for whatever misdemeanor it's done. But you know, but that is the way, as I say, you build up this social responsibility in a child.
Well, we both believe in resilience, and I'm going to tie this up with the next item we got to chat about, and that is the mental state of our young people. We've got 9 million people not in work that we are paying a fortune to in the United Kingdom in state benefits. The Tories are bleating, oh, we'll change all that. Well, they've had 14 years to do it, and they're still not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
3 million people waiting for treatment, not just mental health treatment, but any kind of treatment. But that is the dear old NHS problem again. But people not only not earning wealth for the country, but sucking the country dry. I'm sorry, we are too generous in the United Kingdom with our benefits.
I think that is right, but I think there are also medical issues that need sorting for you to be able to go back to work, in a sense. There must be medical issues that, if it was put right, if there was a minor operation or something, you could then go back. Some illnesses, even if they're not terminal, are incredibly debilitating. And that means with some jobs, you would not be on the money, you would not be able to focus properly, you can't sleep properly. I do think that, you know, that side of things with the medical waiting list and all of that does need to be sorted. People that have got need hip replacements, the pain of a bad hip or a bad knee that could stop you doing or sitting for too long at a laptop. Do you know what I mean? There are those occupations that people need to get themselves back into action. And if you're working, I just think mentally it's better for you. If to work is good for you. You know, so yeah, will be some that are just lazy, that should be getting off their arses and getting back in and using weak excuses. But there will be quite a significant percentage that are waiting for, as I say, non-threatening health conditions, but nonetheless painful ones that need attending.
Regretfully, we see it in our businesses all the time. We are in Spanish term hosteleria, and we have restaurants. You try and get anybody to work in a restaurant, you won't. It's so difficult.
But it's a hard life working in it's a hard life working in a restaurant. I mean, say you've got repetitive strain injury, say you've done something to your shoulder, and you see them all walking in with all these plates up their arm, and it's a long time standing. It's a tough job. I think it's a tough job working in
it depends
hospitality
on where
industry.
the restaurant is. It's tough in Spain, where we used to have a chain of restaurants because of the heat factor. You go in and work over a griddle. When it's 40 degrees inside and 50 degrees over the griddle, then you are mentally ill very shortly.
But if you look at the hospitality industry, if you say you are the chief housekeeper in a hotel and you've slipped a disc or you've got sciatica or you've put some muscle out and you can't work because you're trying to change beds or managing the changes of duvets every day.
It's tough, but I'm not talking about tough. I'm talking about people, young people coming out of school, not going to uni. They are not looking for a job because they don't want one.
I don't think that's entirely their fault. University is not for everybody, and therein we have the rub with Tony Blair that everybody does have the right to go to university, but there's a lot of people that shouldn't.
Oh, so no, absolutely. No, I agree.
Where has the apprenticeship scheme gone? There are many kids that should be released even pre-GCSE to go into an apprenticeship, and we need those people. We need people that are carpenters and plumbers and electricians, mechanics. It's essential. So that just to say that they come out with no hope of what might they do next. Not everybody. In fact, I think there's a huge amount of kids that should not go to university. I really do. I think for some it's a waste of time. And they'd be better off doing some very important apprenticeship, but who got rid of those, I wonder?
Well, that's perfectly true. We are spoilt in Spain because there's more schools for cooks and waiters and waitresses because it's seen to be a good job, and it is in a good society who believe in meeting outside. Well, we believe in meeting inside in pubs. Well, that's the same thing in that it gets communities together. But at the moment, it's a Cinderella, always has been in Britain. But when we, as an example, start recruiting people, and every Monday morning they don't come in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you soon get the hint and the nudge what is happening.
Well,
and you'll be surprised of how many repetitive strain injuries that there are and there aren't. And the simple fact is, Marilyn, it's too easy to live at home with mum and dad.
It's the lack of the work ethic, and that comes from mum and dad. I think that, I mean, when all my children were able to do part-time jobs, they all four of them went off, got off their backsides and found student work. Maybe it was stacking shelves in Sainsbury's. Maybe it was, being I don't know, some sort of a menial job in an office, entering in data. They all, in each and every one of them, had this work ethic as young teenagers of making money and the pleasure of earning money. And that is a good thing to do. And it's very good for your mental health. And that is what builds up resilience. Do you know what? When I was flying over, I know I'm no fan of Tony Blair. I've never liked the man, but I was listening to a podcast of his childhood, and he said some very relevant things. I had no idea that when he was 10, his father, who was a barrister, through sheer hard work, had pushed himself too hard and had this incredibly awful stroke that left him paralyzed down one side and unable to speak. And when he was 20 and he was at university, his mother had become very ill and she then died. And he was talking about he had a happy childhood, but obviously this horrendous shock of his father. But he was talking about how the resilience built up and how the work ethic and how in his life he has seen, and I think this is true, the resilient child, the one that wants to push something forward, has that drive, and very often it's come from adverse things in their childhood that have driven them to, life isn't going to go on forever. What might happen tomorrow? I might not achieve this. So I'm going to really go balls out for it now. And he spoke so much sense. And I really had a completely different view of Tony Blair, having listened to this podcast. And he came across as extremely human. And he talked about politics as well, about he thinks it's gone too much wokey. And he said, you've got to be real in politics. You have got to be real in the moment and real, and not listen to all the fluff that's going on around you, but believe in something. And, I know the Iraq war was all to do with him and everything, and all that went wrong. But as a man, I saw a whole different side of him on that podcast. And he spoke a lot of sense about resilience in early childhood, the adversities. If you have had a good childhood, but death, illness, grief comes your way, it's not the be all and end all. You force yourself to live beyond it, and you almost do it. Yeah. You almost do it out of to sort of. You haven't got your parents anymore to show off in front of and say, "Hey, guess what I did?" You've got to do it on your own merit, and it was very good. It was very interesting take on what you said about early year experiences and how it can drive you.
He's at last got a fan. There's not many he's got, Tony Blair, but Marilyn's a fan, Tony.
Well, a weird thing is I can't stand the man, but I actually liked what you said about. I was surprised. Really surprised.
It's all right. You can get good and bad with anybody. Listen, talking about good and bad, Phoebe, Lendeyu, that's an unusual name, isn't it? Swimmer. And she's put her head above the parapet, bless her, and said, swimming, sport Britain, sport England, swim England, whatever it's called, have been naughty. They're getting hold of young people like her and completely, well, she finished up with bulimia. She said she was abused like many of our athletes are. Even the parents are being abused. And yes, we need your child in for this amount of time.
Well, sport has every abuse in it. It has a propensity for the potential for every abuse in it. I mean, you see how the youngsters, some of the leotards and stuff they wear for gymnastics and the very skimpy swimsuits and stuff. So you've got that aspect of it, but not just that. You've got coaches who are driving an ambition for huge success and accolade. And they drive the kids to a point, if you're not careful, where they are being bullied, emotionally abused, mentally abused. And sport does. One of our ambassadors is Dr. Melanie Lang, and she is an ambassador for abuse in sport and all the research with it. And it has every sport, doesn't matter about cricket, football, whatever. Racism, it has everything in sport. So you have to sort of be right alongside your child and help them live the dream, but also be watching out and assessing what's going on around them. Is the coach appropriate? Is the dynamic of the club okay for you? It happens in cycling. It's just, what is awful, it's so sad, is that sport is such an amazing thing. I was never sporty, but all my kids are, all my grandchildren are, and it's a pure joy to watch, and the benefit of it is amazing. And if some of these people with mental health, these youngsters, get off their backside and got some trainers and went out running, they would relief, and not only like fight and flight, a lot of it would go. Just stop being a blob and get yourself active, get some fresh air into your lungs. But you can't get away from the fact that sport at very, very high level has that potential for something not quite right. And it's no surprise, the swimming thing's been around for ages. Anything where your child can become a success for the Olympics or on stage, drama, dance, any of that has this hovering around, yes, inappropriate behavior, but also the push for achievement, which the parents want as well. And there comes a point where you like to sort of like assess, is this right? Does a child want it? Am I doing this right? Am I, but it does exist there, which is a great shame because it's such a healthy thing to do, such a benefit.
Indeed. We've come out of time again, as we always do. 2 items to go quickly through. Mackenzie and Morrison have been in the news this last week. These were 2 horrors that were involved in county lines with young people, and they were caught drug pushing, using mules, in this case many little kids, between various cities, and they got sent down
Quite
for 3 years.
Yeah, not enough, is it?
3 years. Divide that by 3. In reality, you're coming out in 12 months.
Well, they won't do 3 years, will they? And no. What they don't understand about county lines is they go back to the same thing. When I was in a school last week before I came over here, where there was a lot of evidence of county lines within the school, within the students, which the Children's Commissioner, I absolutely agree with her, says she believes every single secondary school in the country has got a child running drugs or part of a gang. I completely agree with her. And what they don't understand is the brutality of these gangs, what they will actually do. Once you're in, it's to be conscripted to a gang is the easiest thing by taking a £5 note of another child, which is called the hook. They don't see stranger danger, where county lines is concerned, can be the child sat next to you in class, can be somebody the same age who is the risk, who is the danger, who lures you in to hook you in to that gang, where then you've got the next stage as the coordinators, where the big posh cars with the blacked out windows take you to a so-called safe house, anything but safe, where there could be a dozen predators there, 3 times older than the victim. and that child is going to be raped by all of them, given drugs, given alcohol, beaten up, and then dumped. And in turn, that child becomes the next hook. Speak or you die. So I was saying to these kids, trying to make it like, what are the risks? You've taken that £5 note and now you owe that person something, and you can't get out of it once you're in. That's the awful thing. There's no way out. Because the trauma bonding with the gang, and there's no point in thinking that the county line gangs and people that join them are just from child residential centres. They're not. I've seen plenty from, kids that live in penthouse suites in London, children that are left on their own for too long, children who don't have a father, they have a father deficit, put it that way, children who think, I won't be bullied if I. You're never going to get rid of it.
We need more prisons to put the people in.
Well, I only had this conversation the other day. We've got many, many more people in our country now. We've got all sorts of crimes that were never there 20, 30 years ago. Why aren't they building? You go whinging about, we don't have enough prisons, so build some. build some on Scottish islands where we put paedophiles and where we put county line gangs.
Yeah, the planning permission won't come through.
Well, must have been a purpose why they put sex offenders and child abusers on the Isle of Wight, in Parkhurst, and Albany Jail, because it was an island. They couldn't get off.
Well, yes, I know. Queen Victoria had the same problem because on the Isle of Wight, we used to inhabit that for quarter of a century. We know it well. Lovely place. And there was a town there called Wroxall, still is a village. And there was problems there. People were not behaving, and they discovered that they were not very well above the shoulders because they were inbreeding the whole time. Mm-hmm. And if you just inbreed in your own small village, you've got problems. And so it was. So Queen Victoria had a good idea because we had an army in those days and a navy. Didn't have the Air Force quite, but there we are. She said, we must water, these are her words, we must water down the population of Wroxall. So she sent men in and they watered the population of Wroxall. And now it's almost normal when you drive through this village, but you couldn't do that these days, could you? No, is that the way we built an empire?
My sister did her teaching practice on the Isle of Wight, and she was astonished how the cross and inbreeding that went in, especially when it was like the winter, because there was nothing to do. And she said there was about, like, in a class of 25 kids, there's so many of them that were inbred.
Oh my God, listen, we got to go. But before we go, we're not going to give a culinary tip this week. We're going to give a bladder tip. And this is for males and females. So this is your health tip, ladies and gentlemen, because it's been discovered. If you suffer from nocturia, that's one medical designation of this. In other words, if you are up for a wee while, more than twice and above, then you could have nocturia. And there are ways of dealing with this because it affects your health. What way? Well, they've come out with all sorts of things. It can lead to heart attack because you're up and down there. Not that you fall over the dog getting out of bed or anything. It's just that it breaks the restfulness of a good sleep. It leads to higher blood pressure. And it leads to a shortened life. So they've got figures to prove that. So especially if you're 50 plus, I think most people sleep less when you get older. Perhaps you don't need to sleep because you're not as active as when you're younger. But there you go. That is apparently what they came across, certain things that you can do to help. Obviously, the gentlemen with prostate problems have got a real problem. And when 1 in 2 have at least that statistically, that is a problem. And the ladies, of course, have got prolapses. Oh, this is a disgusting conversation.
God, it's lovely getting old, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, not for wimps, I'll tell you. So there we are. I suppose if you swap around and let the man have the prolapse.
Yeah, but how are you going to help yourself not have that then? What's their remedy?
Well, yeah, there's the various tips here. I'm going to give you some tips now. Don't drink too much after evening meal. So, well, that's obvious, but people will now not just drink, any drink, water, tea, whatever, coffee.
Well, what goes in has to come out.
Yeah. And certainly near bedtime, don't drink if you can, although you need to maintain some degree of fluidity during the night. And people have sips during the night, not drinks, sips. If you're on diuretics, and there are quite a few tablets that do have this influence on you, that are not diuretics, in other words, to get water out of your system, swollen legs, ankles, whatever, then obviously manage them better, follow the instructions on the packet. Diabetics can be particularly susceptible for getting up, and people are subject to sleep apnea, which is horrible, actually.
Sleep apnea is very dangerous because my husband used to have that, and the cardiologist said to me, you know, even young men, young women, it's particularly, so like mostly, isn't it, if you're overweight and you've got a thick neck and all that, well, that's dangerous anyway. But the cardiologist said to me when it was my husband's problems, he said, people would like die in the night and they go, oh, you know, they died of sudden death syndrome. He said a lot of the time it is sleep apnea, because if your heart literally stops beating, and then later on in life, because your heart has stopped beating and oxygenated blood hasn't gone to the brain, later in life that does cause dementia.
Yes, and they can get devices fitted to their mouth.
Yeah, you can.
That will help you. Right, last two tips. Elevate your legs for an hour before bedtime. It works. If you can, elevate your legs. But there you go. That's another tip. And the biggest tip, and the biggest fault that they have discovered, is stop watching telly. Telly keeps you awake. Perhaps it keeps your brain active. Goodness knows.
Oh, I think that's true. But I think that's when children go to bed at night. You have to be very careful what stories you read them, because it activates the brain. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and your iPad and other things that you may take to bed. But we're all different. Don't let's say thou shalt.
Well, a tip for parents with devices, that children who take their phones and iPads to bed at night, 65% of children access those phones 30 times in the night.
Wow.
And the Royal Society of Pediatrics say that if your children are gaming and doing all this stuff on their iPads and what have you, they should stop an hour before bedtime, because it activates the dopamine, the happy chemical, that, you know, the brain likes to be happy. So it takes about an hour for the dopamine levels to flatten down. So watch the telly, read a book, go and kick a ball around, but stop an hour before bedtime with those games. That will also help your children sleep. Rocket science, is it? You know.
No, well, no, but what is rocket science out of this, actually? It's not late night telly. It's watching telly anytime during the day.
Wow.
And that is interesting.
There's a thing.
So there you go. So there we are, tip of the week. I'm going to give Marilyn tip of the week. She don't need to tell you she's got those windows and the glorious views. So
I've been very distracted this morning because while we've been doing this, the ferry's gone by, another tanker thing's gone by, and sailing boats have gone by. It's just the most extraordinary view.
Well, yeah, I hope it rains.
Right. Well, it has done, but it's even beautiful in the rain.
There you go.
Well,
listen, we will see you next week, whether it be there or here or wherever.
See you next week.
And you're not having a whale of a time, which is a good thing in your version.
I'm determined to see these whales somewhere. I'm telling you, we have been told of 2 or 3 locations on the shore that we can actually see them.
Get a snorkel.
No, thanks.
Oh, all right. But
you should see these waves. You should see, honestly, it is really rough out there today, but I quite like watching a rough sea. I find it quite attractive.
Well, there you go. Well,
ozone, lots of ozone.
Ozone, yes. She's easily pleased. Until next week.
Bye-bye. Take care.